So surrounded as it is in the collection by works by Hilliard and Isaac Oliver, it's quite easy, I think, to overlook this miniature, but actually I think it's quite interesting, and I'll tell you why. Firstly, from an artistic standpoint, there are no works known to be by Rowland Lockey in miniature. Now, Lockey was an apprentice to Hilliard, and he's always been a slightly sort of shadowy figure in portrait miniature studies from this period. But I think this really has a good chance of being by him, which we explore in our catalogue. But also from the point of view of what it represents and who it shows. Now, we don't know for certain who the sitter is, but it actually, of all the miniatures, it is the most daring and the most intimate, for the simple reason that if you look very, very closely, you can see that this sitter is shown with her breasts exposed. Now, that is unbelievably rare to find a miniature at this date showing a lady who is obviously from a very affluent background shown bare-breasted. Fundamentally, this is an example of a portrait miniature that was made specifically for the eyes of her husband or lover. Also, from the point of view of the costume, I mean, it's sort of formal attire meets sartorial fantasy. And in her hair, you can see that she's wearing this huge diamond. And in the middle of her dress, you can see again this fantastic jewel made of 3 diamonds. I think one of the most confusing elements of this miniature, and this certainly has proved very problematic for scholars in the past, is in the middle left, you can see what appears to be an S. And in the past that's been misinterpreted as an artist's monogram, and for years therefore it was considered to be a work by John Shute, who died many, many years before this work was even painted. It actually is what's called an S firme, and it's a symbol that you see a lot during this period, which is a reference to friendship, steadfastness, fidelity. So it's another example of how just these small little subtle references in miniatures and portraiture at this date have the ability to infuse but also confuse subsequent collectors and scholars. So this miniature first came to light in 1906 when it was included in an article in The Connoisseur. After that point, it then entered the collection of John Pierpont Morgan, who was the greatest collector of portrait miniatures of the early 20th century, the 20th century in general. It's housed in the most exquisite gold and enamel locket frame, which was probably added by Pierpont Morgan. And if you turn it over and if you open the reverse, you can see that actually it's painted on a piece of vellum laid over a playing card. Following Morgan's death, it was acquired by Walter Samuel, and it remained in the possession of his family until recently.